or a good friend, my cousin, family member, and he tells me, he knows a lot about the legal system and whatnot, and he tells me, Chrissy, it's actually a good thing because it just gives them more time. They're not just going to sit there and do nothing. They're going to continue to investigate. Things are going to continue to fall in their laps. Tips are going to continue to come in. And I'm just like, I don't want to hear that. Like, I want to see this guy die. Like, I don't want him breathing any longer.
Well, hello there. How is everyone? I hope you are all well. I can't believe it's Friday already. I cannot believe it. Ain't that amazing? Just like you. You're amazing. And we've got some meat and potatoes to get into. So we do it because of what you've just listened to there is something that we need to talk about. That is Kaylee Gonsalva's mum. She's obviously a little bit emotional, and she's making some statements, and those statements split the room somewhat. So we'll come back to that in a second, because the first thing that I want to talk about is Ethan Chapin quickly. Because off the back end of the video that I did yesterday, some people emailed me. There was a recurring theme to the email, and it was basically referencing the crime itself and talking about if this crime was happening upstairs. So we've got all this stuff going upstairs with obviously Madison and Kaylee, and people have turned around and said, look, I think that this generated all the noise. We know there was noise because we know that, or we've been told, led to believe that Dylan Mortensen came out and, addressed this noise situation. So they feel that Ethan come out of the room, and I have spoken about this. This is a situation that I myself have contemplated. Was there just so much noise that Ethan has come out of his room, and that is what's led to this further confrontation? Because again, we ask ourselves the question as to why Bryan Kohberger, if he is the person who did this, whoever did this, the person who did this, why would they have come down and not just left? And it makes a huge amount of sense that this altercation started in that void between Dylan Mortensen's room and Xana's room, in this space. But that leads us to a problematic situation here that we'll touch on in a second, because I just want to point something else that someone else pointed out as well, and that is with respect as to why Bryan Kohberger or whoever did this crime actually went downstairs in the first place to the middle floor that Xana and Ethan were on. Now, if they've committed this crime upstairs and Dylan Mortensen is indeed shouting and they indeed hear, then they're quite brazen to then venture downstairs to where this person is shouting when they could have just left via, say, a window or another method. Definitely a window. Do you know what I mean? For them to hear this situation, so then you're questioning yourself, so did the person hear Dylan Mortensen shout? Did they hear at all, or were they just in the throes of what happened and were completely oblivious to it? There's a possibility of that. Did it not happen? Did Dylan not shout out at all? Which leads us to the fact that, okay, they've come down, there's this altercation. I don't believe it could have happened in that void, because I believe, think about Ethan Chapin for a second. Ethan Chapin's not a small guy. So if he's heard something and he's on high alert, so he's not sort of sleepy and sort of strolling out with his fucking eyes shut, but he's on high alert because perhaps I've heard something. I told you a story, some of you will remember, about Mrs. Harsh nudging me one night, and it's almost like someone's walking around the house with a flashlight, because this is like a strobe light, and what it was one of the lights in one of the bathrooms had failed and it was flickering, but it looked like someone was walking around the house. Now, when I'd got over the initial heart attack, I was quite alert. And it happened in a few seconds, do you know what I mean? Because I'm thinking, right, someone could be in the house there, and it does wake you up somewhat. And he's 6'3", 6'4". He's a big set lad. Now, in the KTVB interview, they talk about this. They talk about they talk about Ethan. I'll get there in a minute. So yeah, they talk about Ethan, the fact that he's a big lump. He's athletic, he's strong, he's big. And I think to myself, so you got this person who's big and alert, and how could this person have got into this altercation in this void, this area, with a complete stranger, without there being enough noise, commotion, and evidence of that struggle in that area? And if it happens there, then what is Xana doing? Xana would be freaking the fuck out, which further leads you to believe that there would be so much commotion and stuff going on that, again, the downside of all this is that Dylan Mortensen takes the flak again, because you're like, well, you can't possibly have not known what was going on. If this altercation had happened outside your door, and there's a period of time where you've got Xana, who is probably aware of what's going on, because she can hear, people would be screaming, people would be freaking the fuck out. So the fact that we've got the recollection that Dylan Mortensen is saying leads me to believe that this person went physically to the room, because the evidence that we have would suggest that. We have been suggested that Ethan was found in a manner that meant that the door was wedged shut, which to me falls in line with this person has gone to the door, gone to the room. Perhaps they've knocked on the door, and Ethan has come and opened the door and been attacked completely off guard. Completely off guard. We knew, again, we've been told that Xana's door had recently had a new lock fitted. Remember, and these are all important things. So was that lock engaged? Was it disengaged? But it had a new lock. And the reason people have new locks fitted is for a reason. Now, it's either because you're scared your stuff's going to get nicked, or you're scared someone's going to walk in when you're in your room, potentially with your other half. But these are all important things. And I feel that the evidence that we have and what little we know would be more evidence suggesting that whoever did this crime physically went to the door and attacked and caught Ethan completely off guard. He didn't expect it coming. And that, to me, further supports what I said yesterday, in that this seems to me there was multiple people in there that were targeted, because this person made conscious decisions to go to different places, very specific places. That shows prior knowledge of the layout, prior knowledge of where people were, and prior knowledge potentially that they were actually there, because of the one night of the week when they may not have been there, or things would have been different. It was this night, and that was supported by cars in the car park that weren't familiar, and the fact that this house consistently had parties and gatherings and people there when not even the people who lived there were there. But anyway, I digress. That was a long old digress. So we get back to the main point, and that is the Gonsalves family. Gonsalves family, look, I can't for the life of me put myself in their shoes. I can contemplate what I'd be like, and I have numerous times said, the way Steve Gonsalves has been is how I would like to be. I think that I would be worse. I think that I would be going frantic, and I'd have probably been arrested myself by now. That's the truth of it all. But what I have an issue with is the polaring, the going from one thing to the other, where 1 second it's almost like you have this moment of clarity, and that is, I want to know the truth. I want to see the process. I want you to prove to me that who the guy you've got locked up for this, I want you to prove that it's him. I want you to prove it, and at the end of it, for me to be able to be happy that the conclusion is the right one. And Steve Gonsalves has consistently shown that he's not 100% on board, but then he'll flip. something else will happen. And it'll be like, yes, he stalked them, he did this, he did that, and he did the other. And it's definitely him, blah, blah, blah. Even recently, he stated that him and Christy, they're not really on the same page. You know, Christy is absolutely 100% adamant that it's Bryan Kohberger. And you heard what she said at the beginning of this video. She doesn't want him breathing anymore. She wants to see him die. So I think to myself, do you know something? Do you know something? Or is that just a knee-jerk reaction to a situation? Because I think that's what we see in the wider community. People see this case, they get invested in it, they get, you know, they've got no skin in the game. When you're a commenter or a content creator, you may have experiences that give you a certain viewpoint and perspective, but ultimately there's no skin in the game. And we all have access to the same things. You know, I'm just wondering whether, you know, Christy Gonsalves is showing us how easy it is to, in the throes of a situation, is to throw every single moral compass out the window, every single thing that's right, to throw away even the possibility that this person is not the person who did the crime, and just think, do you know what, this is about how I feel now. This is about how I feel. I feel like I want someone to be punished. I feel, and this person is who I'm aiming for. And I want people to, and I've said this before, and I'd even say it to Christy, step back and breathe. And if you haven't got evidence beyond what we have seen, beyond the gag order, beyond the paperwork, beyond everything, I would really consider whether that feeling, that anger, that frustration, that desire to watch another person die is justified. Or, like I said the other day, is it premature? Because again, I constantly, and I have to keep addressing this same point over and over and over and over again, that I will say, let me know down below the one single piece of evidence that proves and convinces you beyond a reasonable doubt that Bryan Kohberger was the person who did it. Now, I'm not saying he didn't do it, because he very well could have done. But what I'm saying is there isn't the evidence out there, and there's a huge difference. The proof, the evidence, the facts are very different from our feelings, our thoughts, and how we process things, and how angry we get towards someone because that's the person who's been having the finger pointed at them. Do you know what I mean? The evidence of something is not always the proof of something. And what I mean by that is you can have evidence that shows something. Like, I could walk out of a room, I could have a plate of cookies in the living room, okay? And it might be that one of the children is renowned for, they love cookies, and one of them, maybe they like them every now and again, but one of the children rarely loves cookies. So when I go out of the room and come back in, them cookies are gone. There is evidence that the kid who loves cookies has just eaten the cookies. But it's not proof. It's not proof, because the other person could have had them. The other person could have done it. The other child could have took them cookies. And I'm trying to put it in the most simplest form. And that is, there may be things that point the finger. There may be things and evidence that shows you something. But that doesn't mean that there isn't an alternative. And what I'm saying is, there is not enough evidence to remove the possibility of alternative. And it is only at that point, when that potential for an alternative no longer exists, that you have your person. And it's at that point that I believe you can truly turn around and say, they now deserve to be punished. They do deserve it. And then you've got the moral and political realm of how you deal with that. Death penalty, is it right? Is it wrong? Putting someone in a cage for the rest of your life, is that right? Is that wrong? But I do believe that you should wait until there is absolutely everything has been unturned, and there is absolutely no room for doubt, and there is absolutely no potential for an alternative. And that's justice. I'll catch you all in the next one.